So whether the resistance band is looped underneath your legs or underneath your feet, or it's tied off to something low and behind you, you're going to be in a kneeling position, and then you're going to do an overhead tricep extension. Now, the beauty of this is you can have the resistance band tied off to something directly behind your head, and then you don't have to get into that really high elbow position or overhead extension with your humerus or your arm. And if you don't have the requisite mobility, this is a great alternative to the tricep extension, because those elbows can be kind of in front of you and far further forward and still get that activation and engagement in the tricep. You can either step in the middle of the resistance band, both of them, or you could just step on one part of the resistance band and then you're gripping the other ends of the resistance band with your hands, just like a regular deadlift, whether it's kettlebell, dumbbell, barbell, or body weight hinge. You're going to drive your torso up, keeping your abs engaged, your chest nice and proud, shoulders down and back. This is going to load into the glute or the butt and the hamstring or the back of the thigh. Think about keeping your vertical core integrity throughout the movement of the deadlift. Again, you're going to feel a lot more resistance in the top part of that deadlift, because that's where you're going to feel more of the resistance from the resistance band. With the overhead pull, you're going to mimic the pull-up, but with a resistance band. So obviously you're going to need to tie the resistance band off to something above your head, or something that's a little bit higher. If you need to, you can get into a kneeling position or a seated position. If you don't have something tall enough for you to be in a standing position for the overhead pull, but you're going to, with the bands overhead, put both your hands through the bands and pull the band down in the same manner that you would do a pull-up. So think about keeping your chest proud, your shoulders down and back, your abs engaged, and your elbows back as far as possible, pulling that band down to your chest. With the overhead press with the resistance bands, part of the band is going to be down underneath your feet, and then the other part is in and through your hands. You're pressing in the same way that you would do an overhead press with dumbbells or a barbell. So think about keeping your hands slightly in front of your shoulder and then fully extending vertically straight up. If you can, have the overhead extension all the way up above your head, but oftentimes you don't have the requisite mobility with your lats. So it's okay to press the bands a little bit forward so that you don't have any undue strain in your lower back to try to compensate for that overhead press. You're essentially doing an alternating plank rotation, just adding in the resistance band. So holding the resistance band with one hand, that's your plant hand, and then rotating with the resistance band in the other hand, resisting against the resistance band while you open up into that rotational plank, bringing that hand up as high as you possibly can. Much like the horizontal pull aparts, you're pulling that resistance band apart, starting with your hands almost next to each other or hands about shoulder width apart. Only this one, you're going to do it in a diagonal fashion. Think about creating pull apart X's in front of you. So create one line of the X, then you switch your hand position and create the other line of the X. What this is doing is it's creating a little bit more shoulder mobility as you engage the upper back muscles and the rear delts. This is a great warm up prior to doing any sort of bench press or push-ups. It's also a good standalone exercise. Donkey kicks are great for glute engagement. Just be aware that the resistance band could slide off and slide down in between your legs, making for a pretty weird and uncomfortable and awkward situation. So ensure that you keep your ankle locked to keep that band in place. And also keeping the ankle locked is going to help you focus on engaging your glute as you drive into that donkey kick position. So the marching knee drives is similar to the regular knee drives, only you're putting the resistance band on your ankles and you're driving up one knee, bringing that knee back down, and then driving up the other knee. So really focusing on alternating engagement for your hip flexors and for your abs. You're gonna step on the resistance band, and then you're gonna have your hands as far apart as you need to have them in order to be able to squat down in your functional range of motion. It's gonna be a lot easier if the hands are further apart, and it's gonna be a lot harder on your vertical core strength and mobility if your hands are closer together. Taking that into consideration, choose the best hand position and the best foot position for you, and then go ahead and lower those hips into the squat position. If you're feeling any pressure in your low back, probably need to reduce the amount of distance that you drop your hips in that squat, in that overhead squat. If you have too much extension in your lower back and you're feeling pain there as well, either your back is bending and flexing or your back is too extended, right? Think about engaging your abs as you do the overhead squat. The band is going to actually be around the upper back and through each hand. In that position, it's just adding extra resistance to a regular push-up. So you're still focusing on the fundamentals of the regular push-up. So think ankle, knee, hip, shoulder, ear in perfect alignment. Think squeezing your front of your thigh or your quads. Think about squeezing your glutes or your butt. Squeezing your abs, keeping your abs nice and engaged, and keeping your shoulders down and back and your scapula nice and engaged with a proud chest as you do the resistance band push-ups. So for the seated calf raises, you're going to be in a seated position. You're going to do the same thing as the standing calf raises. And the reason why you would do either of these is the seated calf raise is going to work the soleus, which is that big muscle inside of your calf. And then the standing calf raise is going to work your gastrocnemius, which are the two heads on the outside of your calf or of your lower leg. So in the seated calf raise position, again, you're gripping either side of the resistance band and making sure that you're stepping on the middle of the resistance band with the balls of your feet and the toes so it doesn't slide out from under you when you do the calf raise. And then you're just driving those heels up as high as you possibly can in the seated position. You're either starting with your right or you're starting with your left. One foot is going to be stepping on the resistance band, and then that same side hand is going to be looped into the resistance band. And then you're doing a basic overhead press, but you're doing it with just one hand. This is going to really help you focus on maybe any sort of asymmetries or imbalances you might have by doing it unilaterally. Unilaterally meaning just one side. So you just focus on one side and then you do the other side, and maybe you realize that you're not as strong or you don't last as long. By doing it alternately, you can hyper focus on one arm instead of kind of not realizing the asymmetries as you do both arms at the same time. With a squat to overhead press, it's just like it sounds. You're combining a squat, which we've talked about, and an overhead press, which we've talked about, all in one movement pattern, one fluid movement. So you'll be squatting with the resistance band underneath your feet and on either side of your hand in a ready to overhead press position. So that band is going to be coming across your chest with your palms facing up towards the ceiling, holding the band like you would hold a barbell. You're going to squat down, go as deep as you can in your functional range of motion. And then once you come to the top part of the squat, which is the standing position, then you're going to immediately go into an overhead press. Overhead pressing your hands up into that overhead extension above your head, and then come all the way back down to the bottom of the squat and repeat as necessary. Standing calf raises, you're going to put the middle of the resistance band underneath the balls of your feet. Because you're lifting your heels up off the ground, it's very easy for the resistance band to kind of crawl underneath the bottom side of your foot and kind of shoot up the back side of your body. So make sure that the bands are actually underneath the balls of your feet and the toes of your feet. This will keep it from sliding out as you do the calf raise. You're going to grip each side of the band with each hand, and then that's going to provide the resistance as you lift your heels up off the ground doing a calf raise. You're going to be stepping on the resistance band, putting both hands through the resistance band, and then curling it up in a regular curl type fashion. Now, obviously, abs need to stay nice and engaged, but you may need to have a slight bend in the knee, maybe a slight bend in the hip with the abs engaged, shoulders down and back, and the chest proud. Another way to do the standing curl, if that horizontal type position, almost like mimicking a barbell or something, doesn't quite work, you can do sort of a hammer curl where you're actually grabbing the vertical part of the resistance band and hammer curling it up. Think about keeping your elbows nice and tight to the sides, shoulders down and back, and keep your elbows from driving too far back behind you as you do the curl. That's going to increase the amount of tension you're going to feel in your biceps. So with a standing face curl, one of your feet is going to be forward. You're kind of in this modified lunge, modified split squat type position with the resistance band underneath that forward leg. And then you're gripping the sides of the resistance band and then pulling that resistance band towards your face. Obviously, there's an inherent risk if that resistance band slips out from underneath the foot. So think about keeping 80% of your body's weight in that forward foot, keeping that resistance band securely down to the ground. Your elbows are going to be at your side, but slightly forward of your torso so that when you curl, your hands end up on either side of your cheeks, almost like you're putting your dukes up in a fight. Stepping on the band, you're going to grip the band behind you and drive that band up vertically in a standing tricep extension. A couple things to think about. If you don't have the requisite shoulder mobility, go ahead and bring that elbow forward a little bit. That's going to take a little bit of the undue strain out of the shoulder. And typically what happens if you don't have the mobility is you also feel a little bit of pinching pain or tension in your lower back. Think about keeping your abs engaged and your chest nice and proud while you're in this position. And try, if you can, to get that elbow stacked above your shoulder as you do that tricep extension. That's going to isolate the tricep the best and create the burn that you're looking for in your tricep. For the step back lunge, one foot is going to be stepping in the center of the resistance band, and then either hand is going to be on either side. That is going to be your plant foot, the foot that stays there. And then the other foot is going to step back, swing back, and then you're going to drop into a lunge position. Again, you're going to feel tension up in that standing position as that resistance band gets stretched. And so it's going to create far more engagement throughout the entire lunge because gravity is going to be the thing that's creating the resistance in the low part of the lunge as you reverse step back. Your hands are going to be basically next to each other in front of you, fully extended arms, gripping the resistance band on either side. And then you're going to stretch that resistance band apart by pulling apart the band and try to bring your hands all the way back to the lateral side of your body while your arms are fully extended. What would then happen is the resistance band would then be touching your chest. That's the full version. Now, obviously, maybe you don't have the requisite strength or the requisite stability or mobility necessary to do that. So you can always do half reps. You can always do 3/4 reps. You can always do quarter reps, depending on the level of the resistance band and the level of your strength. You're going to be in a full kneeling position. You can also do half kneeling, and there's a standing and tons of other ways to do the Pallof press. But the Pallof press, you're essentially creating resistance that's trying to rotate you towards where the resistance band is tied off. And that resistance, that anti-rotation, is going to massively engage your external, internal obliques, as well as your rectus abdominis, as well as your transverse abdominis, the muscles coming across, even in your intercostals and your upper back, your pecs. Everything is going to engage to hold you in that position with your arms fully extended. So with the Pallof press, you're bringing your hands towards your chest, with your hands basically gripping your hands on top of the resistance band, and then you're pressing those hands away from you until your arms are fully extended.